So we've got 5 head coach openings currently. The Washington Commanders, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Atlanta Falcons, and the Carolina Panthers. How would you rank those 5 openings, Wilson?
You know what? Let's do this. I'll go first since I got the first round pick by virtue of you. We'll just do a draft.
Okay. I was going to suggest that, but I didn't know if it would work, and I was like kind of
my first pick, and this is going to be.
Who goes second?
Do rock paper scissors. 3.
Well, I seem to go last in every draft, so we'll just keep that up.
Go.
Okay, so you go last. That's fine. All right, cool. All right, Wilson, you're up first.
Reach did knife for rock paper scissors. He lost. Okay. So you mentioned the 5 teams there. I'm going to throw you a curveball.
Rock paper scissors.
This is going to be the 2006 draft where Reggie Bush doesn't go first. It's what's his name? The edge rusher from NC State that goes to the Texans. Mario Williams. I'm taking the Washington Commanders, and here's
that's mine. That was the number 1 team on my big board.
And here's why. And it's pretty simple. 2 things. The second overall pick, they have $78.8 million in cap space. That's first on planet Earth. The Chargers, spoiler alert, if you want to take them 2 or later, are 29th. They have negative $34 million right now. So a ton of cap space, a ton of draft picks because you traded away everybody on defense. You get the right coach in there, the right GM, draft your quarterback at 2 or do whatever, sign Kirk Cousins, bring him back home. It doesn't matter. And then you roll him because that's a market. Here's the thing. I was talking to my buddy who's a Washington fan, a beleaguered Washington fan, long time, obviously. If you get the owner right, it doesn't matter where your team is located. Like Minnesota plays where it's negative 40. Ownership there is awesome. Kevin O'Connell's doing a great job. Rick Spielman loved being there for 30 years, or he was there 10 plus years, whatever. That's what matters. The owner. That's it. Like if the ownership was right in Carolina, that place would be a hot spot. Like people would love to come to Carolina. But it's not, and it's a doo-doo show. So I'm going with the Commanders. Brinson, excuse me.
Well, the Commanders were my number 1, so I was a little upset when you said that because I was hoping you'd go up. Herbert. But I don't think you would have traded.
Commanders were my number 2.
Okay. Here's the thing. So this is in Washington. You have a revered franchise that was run into the ground by really 2 men, Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder. But Dan Snyder just ran this franchise into the ground. Josh Harris has come in and he's basically doing the not Dan system, the opposite of Dan Snyder. And you saw it. He waited until after. He didn't fire Ron Rivera on his birthday, which is definitely what Dan Snyder would have done, if not before. He's being patient. He brought in. He's thinking outside the box. God, what's the guy's name from the Warriors that he brought in?
Myers.
Bob Myers. And which we have to ask about now, Wilson. Did you know that Rick Spielman was going to be taking this consulting role with the Washington Commanders, or did you find out on Twitter?
I didn't know the specifics. I knew something was in the hopper.
Yeah. Which is fair because like the way it came out was like Ron was let go and immediately he and Bob Myers were in the mix and Rick
that Rick was incredibly shocked that it became the news that it became. He didn't know. I called him today and I said, hey, I've had a busy morning. He goes, oh yeah, what have you been doing? I said, and I just told Breach this before the show. I said, when when Adam Schefter tweets your name, it's a big deal. He goes, oh, I had no idea. I said, yeah, I've been answering texts all day.
Oh yeah, but you've been getting hit up left and right.
You're like Rick's secretary.
Yeah. He goes, oh, how about that?
And co-host.
But anyway,
I mean, it does seem like this is not a GM role. Like Rick doesn't really want to get back in and be a GM, or I don't know if it could be. It seems like this is so. I can
break news here. Rick is not going back into the league. He has made that abundantly clear on the podcast all the time. Yeah, this is a consulting role. He is on the search committee as a.
Well, I think this is really interesting because by bringing in Bob Myers and Rick, our colleague Rick Spielman,
and I think Magic is part of this conversation too.
Magic's an owner,
but I think he's on the committee. If I
Yeah, but I'm saying that they're bringing a guy who understands culture from a different sport, who is going to say like, all right, let's try out these processes, just a different viewpoint. And then Rick, who's got all these connections inside the football world, and I think it's generally regarded as everybody likes Rick Spielman. Like he's a good guy. He's gonna have like you could see Josh Harris trying to build organizational culture in a way that it just wasn't there before. And when you have that number 2 overall pick, if you hit on a quarterback, you could be in better shape immediately than the Chargers, who are also in the same division as Patrick Mahomes for the next 10 years. And by the way, if the Chargers miss on Jim Harbaugh and the Raiders get him, that's not exactly helping matters either. So I think that there's a lot of
aren't we going down the AP Antonio Pierce drive, or are we not convinced that that's going to happen?
Not yet. We're still ranking our spots. We can talk about that when we get to that draft.
Sorry. My bad.
Don't ruin this draft. You're the draft guy.
But yeah, big fan of the Commanders as a job. The fan base is incredible. The city is a huge sports scene. That if you get that place going, you turn around Washington and they will build you a statue. You win a Super Bowl with Washington and like flip the Dan Snyder thing on its head, you'll win a statue. I think that's why it'll be attractive to Belichick to some degree, being from Annapolis. But we'll see. I have the number 2 overall pick. I think I have to take the Chargers here. They have Justin Herbert.
He already took him. Too late.
I know.
They have Justin Herbert. It's just you have to take Justin.
They're
Herbert.
negative $34 million in cap space.
Yeah, you can trim that.
They're in the same division as Patrick Mahomes.
I'm not happy about it. I'd rather
Jared Stidham and Aiden O'Connell.
Fair.
All right, Breach, I know which way you're going. You got a layup. If you blow
who's
this,
your number, Wilson? Who's your 2 though?
Chargers.
Breach, I assume Chargers were your 1.
Chargers were my 1. Look, the salary cap, they're in salary cap hell. That is no doubt. But Justin Herbert, obviously, and you have a top 5 pick in the draft. I mean, you're sitting there with the 5th overall pick.
But who are you going to take, though? I mean, they need the offensive line help, which isn't super sexy because you have Justin Herbert.
Trade down. You have literally do anything.
Like, I mean, you can do that.
Picking 5th overall.
They might need wide receiver help. You might need to take Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh, if he's there, yeah, definitely. But I think they might miss out.
Mike Williams is a free agent, right? And Mike.
They re-upped Mike Williams, but he's coming off.
They re-upped Mike Williams, but yeah, they can get out of there. There's a whole lot of maneuvering that's got to go on with them as a whole.
All right, with the 3rd overall pick of what is the best job opening for a head coach, I was split down the middle, and my tiebreaker ended up being the easiest path to win the division.
I know it.
I took the Atlanta Falcons. I just think that they have the cap space. They have the 8th overall pick. If you get a smart head coach and a good quarterback in there, you are a serious playoff contender, and you should be able to coast to you find a quarterback that's better than Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr, you're going to win that division.
So they're picking 8th, and they feel like a much more stable situation right now than the Houston Texans were 12 months ago.
Yes, I agree with that.
Get it right.
Would anybody consider putting the Falcons above the Chargers or putting the Falcons above the Commanders? Okay.
And I had the Chargers initially as number 2, but as I think about it and reaches logic in terms of where you're playing in the division you're playing in, the cap space you have, Justin Herbert is incredibly attractive, no doubt about it. But he's been on that team for 3 years, and that team has sucked. Not because of him, but they haven't helped him. So you got to get the right person in there to help him as well.
Well, I would think of the teams we've drafted so far, if they all drafted someone tomorrow morning, the coach that would have the best chance of still having their job in 5 years would be the guy hired by the Falcons.
I mean, Arthur Smith would like a word, but sure.
What? He's kept people around.
They didn't have a quarterback.
No, Arthur Smith, who just got fired 3 years.
Yeah, Arthur Blank.
No. I think Arthur Blank is generally pretty patient as long as you're not a total.
Unless
you know what I heard?
10 games in 3
I heard that Arthur Blank saw Arthur Smith at Lowe's, and that was the final straw.
Can we like stop doing like I don't want an owner with the same name as a coach. I don't like that.
Yeah, that can't happen.
Yeah. And same thing with Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles and Ryan Pace. Like, come on, guys. Like, I
get Poles and Pace confused all the time.
Okay, so I actually had the Falcons at number 3 as well. Breach, you I guess get 2 picks here.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go back to.
Oh, for snake drafting, my split was the Raiders.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Yep, I've got the list I've written down in this article. Raiders 4.
Hold on. Before you go next, I want to ask you this.
I'm going to pass on my next pick. Wilson, you're up with the number 5 pick.
I was going to say, what is the chasm between 4 and 5 on this list? Whatever your 4th team is in the Panthers.
I mean, if the Panthers' job is so bad.
I think you would prefer to do what DeMeco Ryans and Ben Johnson did and turn down the interview and just either go back to being a coordinator or hold out for something better.
Well, I mean, on the other hand, you will gain generational wealth and you will accrue it within 2 years when you're fired. I would
imagine if you had like one of those serious sit downs with Matt Rule and Frank Reich, they would both say it was not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, they were both loaded beyond belief to begin with, so it wasn't. Yeah,
I
Matt
just
Rule,
don't know.
Matt Rule ended up going to Nebraska. It worked out fine for him.
But I mean, he put up with 2 years of nonsense, and you can argue. And you and I talked about it when Matt Rule got fired. The initial comments from David Tepper making fun of his baggy pants, and I can't believe I hired this guy. And then Frank Reich felt like he didn't stand a chance. As you pointed out, he was one of the. No one's been fired earlier than Frank Reich. Then I don't know since when. Who wants to? I was talking.
I don't know if you heard this, by the way. Hayden Hurst was talking.
By the way, did we say that Fitterer also got fired? Did we mention that?
Yeah, Scott Fitterer, the GM for the. Yeah, sorry. Talk about things that were obvious that was going to happen. I mean, people have been like, what do you think Scott Fitterer's future holds with the Carolina? I was like, what are you talking about? He's getting fired. You think David Tepper's going to miss a chance to fire somebody on Black Monday? Come on, please.
Anyway, go with Hayden Hurst.
Hayden Hurst was asked about Bryce Young and said he had too many voices in his ear, and basically insinuated that at the college level at Alabama, there is one voice. It is Nick Saban, the voice of God, so to speak, who controls everything and handles everything, keeps it streamlined. And with this particular Panthers team, with all this big coaching staff, that there were a lot of voices in his ear and a lot of people who wanted to take credit when he was the next guy, which I think is really interesting because you have an OC, you have a head coach who got fired, who didn't really work with the OC, who was kept, and then a quarterback's coach and a running back's coach who were also fired. And so we heard that Joe Person reported this too, that there was a lot of
Game of Thrones
drama. What's that?
Game of Thrones. That's just
Game of Thrones within the coaching staff. And I think that all goes back to David Tepper. And
again, it's funny you say that because when I was thinking about it, and I talk to Rick about this all the time, like the Wilfs he talks about them being great owners. They're not in anyone's hair. You do have to answer questions by why certain things go certain ways. And I would say to Rick, occasionally, I said, so if a coordinator's messing up, are you having a conversation with Zimmer? He goes, no, it's not my job. I let Zimmer coach. I let the coaches coach, and I do what I'm supposed to do, and that stays separate. And there's no sort of Game of Thronesing going on. But when you're, in part because of the stability at the top, to your point, when David Tepper is out there throwing water on people and cursing at Breach right before he fires Frank Reich, whatever that was. I mean,
his melted caviar.
Oh my gosh! So you don't have a chance.
And don't forget too that when he hired Matt Rule, he basically forced Matt Rule to hire Joe Brady as his offensive coordinator because Joe Brady was the hot name with coordinators. This has been a recurring theme for David Tepper since he bought the Panthers, is impressing what he thinks is the best thing to do upon the coaching staff. And if you don't let football people do football things, you're just going to end up hiring and firing people over and over again. And that's why this job is fifth, and it's not even like, what job is there? A job in the NFL that could come open? Like, just again, any job could come open that you would slot below the Panthers.
Well, the bad teams are Washington, New England, Arizona, LA, and none of those jobs come close to that. Hey, Brees, let me ask you this:
right?
How did the Bengals? How did Mr. Brown get out of his own way and allow the Bengals to be good?
I mean, that started with Marvin Lewis. So it took 15 years of Marvin Lewis not getting fired and just kind of slowly at a turtle snail's pace to turn things around there and let other people make decisions. And then Zach Taylor got to benefit from that. But look, the Bengals were a team that they were the Panthers in 2019 when they were going through this coaching search, and they hadn't been to the playoffs in a while. And
the answer is Joe Burrow.
Well, I mean, and that's the problem if you're the Panthers, is that you're stuck with a quarterback who doesn't feel like is going to take you to a Super Bowl. And if you're going to be the head coach there, you have to embrace Bryce Young, even if you don't want to. So that's
let me ask you this, Breach, because I'm too close to the situation, because I love Bryce Young more than I love my kids. Where on the list of problems at Carolina does Bryce Young rank in your mind?
3.
All right.
I think Tepper's 1. Just you can't have an abrasive boss.
Yeah, Tepper's 1. The offensive line is 2, and then I think the weapons are probably 3, and then Bryce Young's 4.
And the coaching staff not helping him out could be in that mix too. But yeah,
Tepper might be 1 through 5. Honestly,
that's fair. Tepper was calling plays. I heard, by the way. That's not true. I'm joking.
I can't help, and it's just impossible for me to look at a draft board. And I mean, I'm not the billionaire who traded away the pick. it's impossible for me to look at a draft board and not see via Carolina and just think like, dude, you gave away the number 1 overall pick in a draft with potentially multiple franchise quarterbacks and one of the best young receivers we've seen in quite some time, and Marvin Harrison Jr. That was with the first pick or cover 3 joke maybe. Rome, is it Rome? Rome, who's
Rome Odunze.
Rome Odunze, who for Washington, who so I mean, this draft is loaded, and the Panthers gave up the number 1 overall pick in it. Even if Bryce Young had been good, like even if they like, let's say you like Bryce Young and you don't want to draft another quarterback, you could trade this first overall pick for a bounty.
Well,
it is one of the worst trades, not because of Bryce Young, but because of what you were giving up draft capital wise, like DJ Moore and all these other picks. It's one of the worst trades in NFL history.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I understand where you're coming from, though. But here's the thing: if the Texans had given up that much for CJ Stroud, we wouldn't be saying anything.
No,
because he's a home run. So my other point is that this is a cautionary tale for Washington and the Patriots and whoever trades up for a quarterback. You better have a plan, because if the Bears draft someone, you better have a plan that involves someone like Bobby Slowick and a GM that can get players to help your quarterback, because Bryce Young could play for Houston and they wouldn't be as good as they are, but they wouldn't be a 2-win team, and he looks like he's never thrown a football before. But I take your point. The draft haul looks absolutely absurd in retrospect, given how terribly they played, to the point where Breach was not alone in yelling for Andy Dalton to take the field.